Hello, welcome to People, Power and Politics. Since the 2026 World Cup has started, I think many people around the world are already focused on football. So, let's talk about something related to the World Cup. Did you watch the opening ceremony of this year's World Cup, especially the one in Mexico? The 2026 World Cup is being hosted jointly by Mexico, United States, and Canada. The first opening ceremony was held in Mexico at the iconic Azteca Stadium. The stadium is not just any stadium, it's a place full of football history. This was the stadium where Diego Maradona scored two of the most famous goals in football history during the 1986 World Cup, the Hand God goal and goal of the century. And now, decades later, the same stadium hosted the opening ceremony of the 2026 World Cup. We saw performances, celebrations, and global stars like Shakira. It was also a movement watched by people all over the world. But while millions of people were watching the celebrations inside the stadium, there was another story happening outside. There were protests outside the stadium. The media did cover them, but compared to the huge attention given to football, these protests received much less attention. Inside the stadium, people were waving flags and celebrating, but outside, there were also people fighting for their rights, demanding accountability and change, and that raised an interesting question. Throughout the World Cup history, what kinds of political events have happened around this global sporting event? How have different groups used the World Cup as a platform to make change and advocacy? That's it, what we are going to explore today. This is not going to be a heavy topic. Instead, we are going to look some interesting moments where sports and politics became connected. Because the World Cup only happens every 4 years, I thought this would be a good time to look back. The first thing we need to talk about is nationalism. Nationalism is one of the most obvious things we see during football tournaments, especially the World Cup. No matter how much people talk about being global citizens and liberalism, when the World Cup comes, people wear their national team jerseys with their flags and passionately support their country. That moment before a match where players stand and sing their national anthem is often one of the most emotional moments. National pride reaches its higher point. Players give everything on the field, and fans support their team with all their energy. Of course, nationalism in football is a huge topic and it's the same in other sports. But today, I just want to focus on how the World Cup has been connected to politics. So, let's look at some of the political movements in World Cup history. Let's start with the 1978 World Cup. The 1978 World Cup was held in Argentina. But 2 years before that tournament, in 1976, Argentina experienced a military coup. During this period, the military government suppressed political opponents, journalists, democracy activists, and ordinary citizens. Many people were arrested, tortured, or disappeared. And during this difficult period, Argentina hosted the World Cup. For the military dictator Jorge Rafael Videla, this was a huge opportunity. He used the World Cup to build legitimacy and improve the image of the government. Because the World Cup attracts global attention, international journalists and media organizations came to Argentina. The military government wanted the world to see the Argentina as stable and successful. So, what we can see here is that events like the World Cup are often used by governments, especially authoritarian regimes, as a means of gaining international support and legitimacy. But while the government was using the World Cup to promote itself, another group was also using this movement to make their voices heard. That group was called the Mothers or Plaza de Mayo. They were mothers whose children had disappeared under the military regime. Many families did not know whether their children were alive or dead. They simply disappeared. So these mothers organized themselves and began protesting regularly. When the World Cup arrived, they used the international attention to tell the world about what was happening in Argentina. This shows up something important. The World Cup is not only a football competition, It can also become a political stage. Governments may use it to gain international support and legitimacy, but ordinary people and activists may also use it to bring attention to their struggles. This is connected to a term called sports washing. Sport washing means using sports to improve the image of a government while hiding problems such as human rights abuse or political oppression. Basically, sports are used to wash away a negative image. If a country becomes famous for a successful sporting event, people may remember the victory and celebration while forgetting the problems happening behind the scenes. In the 1978 World Cup, the Argentina government reportedly spent $700 million preparing for the tournament and strongly supported the national team. Eventually, Argentina won the World Cup, and for many people around the world, what they remember was Argentina lifting the trophy. The voices of the mothers whose children disappeared received much less attention. For many of us, when we think of Argentina, the first things that come to our mind are legends like Diego Maradona and Messi. We tend to see Argentina as a football powerhouse and often know little about the history of military dictatorship. This is what is known as box watching. It is one of the ways authoritarian regimes can use box as a tool to gain legitimacy and shape international perceptions. Now, let's move to the 1986 World Cup. The 1986 World Cup was held in Mexico, but before the tournament started, Mexico had experienced a devastating earthquake just 8 months earlier. It was a very massive earthquake around magnitude 8.1 and it caused serious destruction. So the Mexico government faced a difficult choice. Should they spend money on rebuilding and recovery, or should they continue investing in hosting the World Cup? In the end, the government continued spending heavily on the World Cup, while many citizens felt that more resources should have gone toward helping people affected by the earthquake. At that time, Mexico was also under the long rule of the PRI party. It was basically a one-party dominant political system. There were restrictions on political freedoms and public protests were not easy. But the World Cup created a very unique opportunity. Because the international media from all around the world were there, the government could not easily suppress public demonstration. So people used the attention of the World Cup to express their frustration. During the opening ceremony, when the president gave a speech at the Azteca Stadium, some spectators even booed him. It was a powerful movement as the people gradually became more organized and stronger. When the 1988 election arrived, the PRI could no longer get as many votes as it had before. Election fraud and irregularities also became widely known. As a result, the party influence and reputation began to decline. Over time, opposition groups became stronger and PRI dominance began to weaken. Eventually, Mexico moved away from one-party rule. What I want to say is that during the 1986 World Cup, the earthquake and the World Cup both became factors that pushed Mexico toward political change. It was not that the World Cup alone caused the change, but it had an indirect effect. People who previously did not dare to oppose the government or hold protests took advantage of the opportunity when international media arrived for the World Cup and used that movement to express their demands. Political opposition groups also used the opportunity to organize and stronger their movements. Therefore, this became a remarkable case where the World Cup contributed in an indirect way to a process that eventually moved toward political change. And there was another famous political movement from the 1986 World Cup. From the 1986 World Cup, it was the quarterfinal match between England and Argentina. Argentina won 2-1. This was the famous match where Maradona scored both the hand-on-God goal and the goal of the century. But for Argentina, this was more than just a football victory. Only 4 years earlier, Argentina and Britain had fought the Falkland War, and Argentina had lost. So defeating England on the football field felt like a symbolic victory. It revived national pride and emotions among Argentinians. This is another example of how football can connect with history, identity, and politics. Let's move to the 1998 World Cup. The 1998 World Cup was held in French. At the time, French was having debates about immigration and national identity. There were increasing numbers of immigrants, including people from Africa and other regions. Some far-right political groups criticized the French national team. They argued that the team had too many players from immigrant backgrounds and questioned whether they truly represented French. They asked, is this really a French team? But then something interesting happened. France won the World Cup, and one of the biggest stars of the team was Zidane, whose family background was Algerian. Many other players also came from immigrant families. The victory challenged the idea that national identity must be based only on ethnicity. It showed the ideas of civic-centered nationalism, that belonging to a nation can be based on citizenship, shared values, and participation. The 1998 World Cup also had another memorable political movement, the match between the United States and Iran. The United States and Iran had been diplomatic enemies since the 1979 Iranian Revolution. They had no formal diplomatic relationship for almost 2 decades. So, when these two countries met on the football field, many people expected a tense and hostile match. But what happened was completely different. Before the match, during the national anthem ceremony, Iranian players gave white roses to American players. So white roses are often seen as a symbol of peace. After that, both teams took a group photo together. Instead of focusing on political conflict, the players showed friendship and respect. The whole world was surprised. Many people saw this as an example of how sports can create connections even when governments are in conflict. It showed that while political leaders may have disagreements, ordinary people may still want peace and friendship. In the 2026 World Cup, both the United States and Iran have qualified. They are not in the same group, but since the United States and Iran are currently in conflict, if these two teams manage to advance and face each other directly, fans are hoping to see a similar kind of movement happen again like before. Now, let's move to the 2006 World Cup in Germany. This World Cup was special because of the German people themselves. After World War II, many Germans felt uncomfortable showing their national pride. The German flag and national symbols were sensitive because of the histories of Nazi Germany. Many people worried that showing strong nationalism could be misunderstood as extremism. Before 2006, German football fans supported their team, but you rarely see huge number of flags everywhere or people openly celebrating national identity. But during the 2006 World Cup, everything changed. Because Germany was the host country, German flags appeared everywhere. People proudly supported their national team. For many Germans, this was the first time after World War II that they openly expressed national pride on such a large scale. And the international reaction was also different. People no longer automatically connected German national pride with extremism. Instead, they saw that Germany had developed a different kind of nationalism when compatible with democracy. Many political scientists argue that the 2006 World Cup changed the way both Germans and the world view German national identity.
I remember the opening game in Munich, and it was the first time that the whole stadium was singing the anthem, which before never happened.
German football was in the grip of a wave of violence, which also had real far-right aspects. I think the summer fairy tale in 2006 almost invisibly benefited from the years of hard work with football fans, of endeavours to achieve peaceful coexistence within football. People in other countries also took note that there was a relaxed atmosphere here. The World Cup helped show that Germans aren't always as deadly serious as they seem.
Now, let's look at the 2014 World Cup in Brazil. Brazil is a country where many people still face poverty and inequality. But The government spent huge amounts of money building stadiums and preparing for the World Cup. Many citizens questioned this decision. They asked, why are we spending so much money on football stadiums when we still need better public services? One famous protest slogan was, "We want FIFA standard hospitals." The meaning was simple. If the government can build stadiums that meet FIFA standards, why can't it provide hospitals that meet the same level of quality? The World Cup became a platform for citizens to demand better public services. Next, the 2018 World Cup in Russia. One interesting movement happened during the match between Switzerland and Serbia. Swiss players Shakar and Shaqiri both scored. Both players have Kosovo-Albanian family backgrounds. They were born into families that have fled to Switzerland during the Balkan Wars, where the Serbs carried out ethnic cleansing. After scoring, they celebrated by making the double-headed Ige gesture, a symbol associated with Albania. It was a political and identity message. They were saying that even though they represented Switzerland, they still remembered their identity. Football players and fans often use these movements to express political messages, sometimes through gestures, symbols, flags, or even refusing to sing national anthems. FIFA officially says football and politics should be separated. Players can receive fines or punishment for political messages, but even with those rules, people continue to use football as a way to express their belief. Then, moving on to the 2022 World Cup, which was hosted in Qatar. As we know, Qatar has a semi-authoritarian system of governance. Although it has a strong economy and is modern and highly developed, there are still many issues inside the country, including the lack of democracy and human rights concerns. To cover up these issues, the Qatar government has frequently used the spokes-watching strategy mentioned earlier. Examples include buying the football club Paris Saint-Germain PSG and hosting the 2022 World Cup. However, human rights activists who were dissatisfied with this also used the World Cup as an opportunity to highlight issues in culture, including human rights violations, worker rights abuse, restrictions on freedom of expression, the treatment of LGBTIQ+ people, and other issues seen as inconsistent with democratic values. The Qatar government wanted to use the World Cup to improve the image, but instead it brought more international attention to what was happening inside Qatar. As a result, Qatar faced significant criticism and reputational damage. And now, we were back to the 2026 World Cup. As I mentioned at the beginning, there were protests outside the Mexico opening ceremony. People were protesting for different reasons, including worker rights, government responsibility for missing citizens linked to the drug war, and concerns about spending huge amounts of money on the World Cup instead of social welfare programs. Once again, the World Cup became a movement where citizens use global attention to make their voices heard. So in conclusion, the World Cup is the biggest sport event in the world. It's a competition full of passion, emotions, and national pride. But at the same time, it is also a political stage. Governments use it to build their image and gain international support. Citizens and activists use it to highlight their struggles. Even though people often say sports and politics should not mix, the reality is that politics is often present within sports. The political systems, social conditions, and the development of a country also influence its sporting world. So today, I just wanted to explore some interesting movements where the World Cup and the politics came together. I couldn't include every single example, and there are many other important events I didn't mention. If you know any other political movements connected to the World Cup, please share them in the comments. Thank you for watching and see you in the next episode.